Welcome to the Australian Business Executive Podcast, where we speak with Australia's most influential industry professionals on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all our content, including our magazines, podcasts and videos by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is Paul Klymenko, co-CEO and executive director of Planet Arc, who is also heading up the launch of the first Circularity event taking place in Sydney on Thursday, November 24th and Friday, November 25th at the Hilton Hotel. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So, as the head of Circularity 2022, you're, as I mentioned, also the co-CEO and executive director of Planet Arc. Why don't you just take a minute and remind us of the work of Planet Arc and how it's connected to the launch of the Circularity event?
Well, Planet Arc is an environmental not-for-profit, which is 30 years young this year. It's our 30th anniversary. And we have a vision where people thrive in balance with nature. And we're hoping to do that by creating a carbon neutral and circular economy, because we believe if we collectively achieve this, we'll solve all our environmental problems. And that ranges from climate change to ocean plastics. So what we did to facilitate this is we created the Australian Circular Economy Hub. And its goal is to help facilitate the transition to a carbon neutral circular economy in Australia. One thing we realised is that we had to have an annual gathering of what we call the Coalition of the Willing. And so we have created Circularity 2022, which is our first attempt at doing that.
All right. Okay. Coalition of the Willing. I haven't heard that term in about 20 years. This is all tied around the circular economy, as you mentioned. So for those unfamiliar with the concept, do you want to just give us a quick rundown of what this means?
So in simple terms, the circular economy is the opposite of the current economic framework we have, which is called the linear economy. And that's characterized by us taking resources from nature, using them for products and services, and then disposing of them. And most of that ends up somewhere in the environment. Sometimes it's in a hole in the ground called a landfill. Sometimes it's dumped on land, and sometimes even worse, it's in our oceans. So that is what the linear economy is. The circular economy is the opposite, and it follows effectively the laws or the rules of nature. If you think of nature, there is no landfills. There's no such thing as waste in nature. It's a resource for another process, for another species. So that's what the circular economy is about. It's about taking what resources we get out of nature and making sure we maximize the utility of those by constantly refurbishing them, recycling them, repurposing them. So there is no waste going back into nature. We're constantly cycling them. And by doing that, we're going to reduce our footprint on nature.
And so we are here to connect that with the launch of the first Circularity event. So why don't you take us through the event's purpose?
So Circularity 2022 is designed to inspire, educate, and provide opportunities for what we call radical collaboration. So that's when often people are getting out of their normal comfort zones of collaboration. It could be something like an energy business partnering with a recycling business, for example. Normally, you would not find that happening, but the energy business might be using, say, solar panels and batteries to create a renewable energy system for someone. But at the end of life, those materials need to be captured and repurposed so that, again, they could be turned into the next renewable energy system. So that's an example of, say, radical collaboration. And what we aim to do is bring the latest in circular economy activity right across the APAC region. So that includes the latest in research, implementation of circular economy thinking, and most importantly, allows opportunities for networking and formation of radical collaborations.
So what will Circularity be trying to achieve through this? How will you effectively kind of define its success?
Well, obviously, the amount of people we have in the room is one measure, but more importantly, it's about the connections, the collaborations that form, the great ideas that get shared and inspire people, and most importantly, people knowing that they're not alone. They are part of the coalition of the willing.
Do you have any, when you talk about circular and linear economies, do you have any sort of facts and figures that you can kind of share with us to help put this into perspective?
Yeah, so at the moment, the best estimates are that we're only about 10% circular. So that means 90% of the resources we're taking from nature are lost. So what that means is that we're causing what I call a potential environmental catastrophe, because between climate change and our pollution of the environment, we're getting to a very sticky point in history where if we're going to continue to be able to thrive, we have to be able to decarbonize our economy and radically reduce our footprint on nature. So, and there's a term called ecological footprinting, which tries to give us an estimate of when we've used up the productive capacity of the world in a year. So unfortunately, it gets lower and lower, shorter and shorter every year. But basically, by the end of July, we've actually used up the productive capacity, what I call nature's interest. And that means for the rest of the year, we're digging into its natural capital. And we see the result of that, whether it's through more floods and bushfires, loss of species, pollution in our air and waterways. They're the results of us digging into natural capital. So without depressing anyone, what I'm trying to say is the time for action is it's really important that we do it now. And fortunately, as you've seen probably from the media, we're getting so much more action on climate change and decarbonising our economy. But alongside of that, going to renewables will solve half the problem. The other half's going to come from circular economy thinking, where we're actually going to be repurposing resources, not dumping them into the environment, and making sure that we actually need to extract less resources from nature.
Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit more about who this, or rather who the event is aimed for?
Yeah, so the event's been designed for the widest possible appeal. So everyone from business and government leaders, circular economy practitioners, sustainability and recycling professionals, academics, and all those interested in a circular future are invited to join us. It's not so much who we're leading out of the room. It's who we're really inviting everyone that's interested in helping create a carbon neutral circular economy to be in the room.
Okay, and so what can attendees expect from the event, and why should they come along?
We've put a lot of effort at Planet Ark to carefully curate the program. So there's lots of interactive panel sessions, keynotes, networking opportunities and side events, and there's a really good conference dinner planned with lots of opportunity to network. And in that dinner, we'll also have the first ACE Hub Awards to congratulate the people in Australia who are leading the charge on circular economy implementation.
Okay. So before we finish today, is there anything else that you might like to add or haven't had a chance to address?
Yeah, I think just again that the call to action, the time to transition to a carbon neutral circular economy is now. So I really would ask the listeners to really consider attending the Circularity 2022 conference and joining the Coalition of the Willing.
Excellent. Well, Paul, thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome.
This has been a production of the Australian Business Executive, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited, all rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Australian Business Executive, including our magazines, podcasts and videos, by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.